right. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Biomed Bros podcast. We are really excited here, and we have our very first guests. They're MedPorium, and we're going to give them some time to talk in this episode. But first, just to kind of open us up, we would like to thank all of the listeners for the support. Again, even after our last episode, we've had a lot more listeners, a lot of new followers on Instagram. So that's really great. YouTube as well. So thank you guys so much for the support. We really appreciate it. Now, in this episode, again, we have the guys from MedPorium here, which we're really excited about. And they are in high school, and they have this platform that they call MedPorium. And so we're going to let them talk about that. So go ahead, guys. You can take it away from here.
Thank you guys for having us. My name is Erkin Jumayev. I'm one of the co-founders of MedPorium, and I'm a senior in high school based in Texas.
Hey Joe, hey David. My name is Jahangir Kareem. I'm a senior at LAKEY High School, which is located in Temple, Texas.
Very
Awesome.
cool.
Awesome. So tell us about MedPorium. What is it? What is the goal? How did you guys start it? Give us the whole story.
MedPorium basically started through our passion for medicine. Me personally, my passion for medicine grew during the COVID pandemic, and the COVID-19 virus was something very new. And my mom, she was actually a registered nurse, and she would always help patients who were in the COVID-19 facilities. And I was just really interested in how the COVID-19 vaccine or how the COVID-19 virus just goes into your body and how it damages lungs, damages tissue, and how it can cause certain illnesses. And that's where my passion really grew, just learning about the COVID-19 virus. And over time, I learned about the immune system, how the body sort of reacts to the COVID-19 virus. And it was throughout the COVID pandemic. And then from there, I've changed all my classes from sophomore year. I changed them to sort of the healthcare pathway, since in our high schools we could choose which pathway we want to go to, such as engineering, business, or health, and I chose health. And one of my classes I took was medical terminology. So I think we started school, it was pretty late, because of the COVID pandemic. It was a new school, and I started with medical terminology. And the first unit we learned was the skeletal system. We were learning some medical abbreviations, prefixes, suffixes, and it was just very interesting. And I thought to myself, why don't I just keep learning? I mean, I really enjoy learning about medical terminology. I just enjoy learning about skeletal system. So it was just this one day where I saw my mom's anatomy physiology textbook she used to become a registered nurse. It was Kenneth Saladin Anatomy Physiology. I think it was sixth edition or something. And I just started reading the skeletal system, and it was just from there. Like, I learned about osteoclasts and osteoblasts, how they can break bone, or how they can add more bone density. I learned about bone elongation, and from there, I also learned how to take notes properly, because it's actually a funny story. But I started taking notes by literally copying down the textbook, and I thought to myself, I mean, this is not a good way to take notes. So I learned how to take notes. I learned how to sort of read these anatomy physiology textbooks, and sort of upgrade my vocabulary, my medical terminology. And I continue to do that for all the systems: skeletal system, circulatory system, urinary system, etc. And that continued on throughout spring break. And I went to Erican's house in spring break, just to relax, just have a good time. And I remember he pulled me over to his room, and he told me about this project he's been working on. And initially, the project name was Medturio, and I was really interested. He pitched it to me sort of like this: "Hey, Jahangir, I'm trying to make this tutoring company that is more like Khan Academy, but based for medicine." And at first, I thought the idea was far-fetched. I mean, two high school students who are still in their sophomore year making a tutoring company. I mean, how would that even work? But Erkin, he persuaded me to join Medturio, and I joined after then. But we changed the name because during that day we were moving bricks, and that name Material, it just sounded so familiar. And we're moving bricks, and I found out, oh, he just took the name Lecturio but put Med, because Lecturio is like another company that does lectures and stuff. So I still tease about I still tease him to the day about how he sort of took that name. But after that, I remember we had a FaceTime call. We wanted to create a new company name because Lecturio Medturio was, we really didn't want to do Medturio. So we wanted the name Med to be somewhere. So we literally just searched up company name generator, and we put Med, and then they just showed us a bunch of stuff. There was Med Academy, there was Med. This and that, and we saw Medporium, and I think that's what really caught our attention. The word Medporium, I forgot what Porium stands for, but it's something of like high stature, or just very honorable. So we chose the name MedPorium, and from there, Erican made the first MedPorium video just as a test. It was, I believe, it was about thermochemistry, because he was in advanced chemistry, and his advanced chemistry was much more advanced than mine, which is kind of weird, but it was just a different curriculum. And after that, I just found some free time, and I said, why don't I just start making the first anatomy physiology video? And the first one was about the urinary system. So I just went on, and I chose the urinary system because I want to choose something that would be that invoked my passion for medicine, but it was also something that I could test with, because during that time, my real passion was like the circulatory system, the heart, but I didn't really want to risk or test making midpoint videos over heart anatomy, heart physiology. So I chose urinary system, and I took during when I was reading the anatomy physiology book, I was taking notes, and from those notes, I was making midpoint videos, and I just took those notes and I put in a slideshow, and I just took my dad's AirPods and I just started recording. And it was from then I created more midpoint videos. And then throughout, I learned how to edit videos. I learned how to sort of tutor how to improve my public speaking, even though if it wasn't public, I kind of felt like I was talking to students. And after urinary system, it was the summer, and I continued on, and I wanted to change the MedPoint format because slideshows weren't something unique. Like I was looking at Khan Academy, or there's this YouTuber called or YouTube channel called Organic Chemistry Tutor that I watch for chemistry, and most of their videos they use some platform like Notability, OneNote, or something like that, where they have a pen tablet, and then they just draw each of the illustrations, and then they draw it and explain it. So I want to do the same thing, and I got Notability, and I did that for genetics and cellular function. I was talking about DNA, and I used Notability to sort of make all those illustrations. And that's where I sort of created this format, or this sort of step method to making MedPorium videos. I would start by researching, making a script, then creating all these illustrations on Notability, and then recording it and editing it, and just went on from there. And after genetics and cellular function, it went to immune system, and after that, it was just from there on. We made pathophysiology videos. Eric also made the skeletal system videos, but and then further on, we made some podcast episodes that I researched on, such as the first one was about obesity and the obesity epidemic, and the second one was effects of caffeine, because I wanted to make podcast episodes that many people aren't really familiar with, like medical concepts that we know about but we're not really familiar with. Obesity, we understand it, but we don't understand how detrimental it is, how much of an epidemic it is. And caffeine, many people think caffeine is bad, many people think caffeine is good. There's always this two-sided argument with caffeine. So I thought, why don't I just make a podcast over caffeine? Then after that, it just we blew up. We had many views. We had a lot of support from my school, many support from Erican's school. So yeah, that's how MedPoint really started.
Yeah, similar to Jahangir, my passion also started in during that summer of COVID, so summer of 2020. Um, so my father, he suffered a medical emergency, and which required some help from doctors and stuff. And You know, at the end of the day, it was, 100%, in my opinion, by the grace of God, he's still here, but there's still those doctors and those nurses, those are the people, excuse me, those are the people who, comforted me and comforted my family during that time. And so I'm gonna be honest with you guys, until my sophomore year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna major in business and continue to play basketball through college. I was like, that's what I wanted to do. Nothing's going to change that. But then that sort of instance basically just changed it. And that's what made me want to pursue medicine. And so similar to Jahangir, I went to my counselor and I said, I want to change all my classes from, business economics towards more pre-med based. And I also wanted to like kind of sort of get ahead because we know like how much information is being covered in medicine. I'm sure there's a lot and in a short span of time. So we basically just wanted to kind of get ahead so we're not shocked and we're not, new to the information we see. But one thing that I noticed and also Jahangir noticed is that like the free resources on YouTube, they're like, don't get me wrong, they're good, but some of them were like unorganized and they had no playlists. It was just kind of all over the place. And the like premium versions of them, they were they were too expensive for us at the time. So I decided I want to create like a company, a platform for free that can basically provide free medical education, sort of like, Khan Academy. And yeah, so that's basically my story, what made me want to pursue medicine. And so yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I think you guys have a great, foundation, and I love the vision that you guys have. Um, Coming from my background and David's background as well, when we were in graduate school, we both were able to teach anatomy and physiology to college freshmen and sophomores usually. And so we have a heart for teaching, and it's a very unique calling in that it takes a special type of person that can take such difficult information to kind of conceptualize that is medicine and portray it in a way that's easy for the students to understand. And so, offering it for free for all of your viewers and stuff, I think is awesome. Um, so tell me this, this is kind of like, you know, um, medical school interview 101 type of question. Um, what got you guys interested in becoming physicians specifically and not, nurses or PAs or that? Like, what drew you to becoming a physician?
Well, I think what drew me to becoming a physician is that, like, I was really interested in the medical field after reading those anatomy physiology books, but I wanted to do something hands-on because I've always loved doing hands-on projects. I've always loved doing those science fairs where you build, like, just something and you just present that. And I just really wanted to do something hands-on as a career, and I also wanted to do something to where I'd have a lot of school. And a lot of people don't want to go to like maybe like 7 years of school, 8 years of school. But me personally, I just love learning. I love learning about the human body. So I wanted something that was going to be difficult, but the end result would also be very satisfying. And I saw being a physician, and mainly surgery, because surgery is the one that's most hands-on. They're very crafty, and they also get to see the human organs, the human body. That's what I really wanted to do, because being an going to internal medicine or pediatrics or family medicine. Don't get me wrong; those are very great specialties, very crucial to the medical field. But it was just I really wanted to see the organ, everything that I've studied for, everything or in the future, but everything that I'd study for, everything that I do for medical school, I'd want to see the organ, how it functions, and how certain diseases can be affected by it, and that's what really swayed me to being a physician or wanting to pursue being a physician and surgery mainly.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And but for me, it had to do with whenever I was at the hospital with my father. My dad's neurosurgeon, Dr. Baskin, he's a Houston Methodist. He came up with his staff, and he handed me this kind of goodie bag, this little toy stethoscope. It was yellow and gray, and it had the Methodist logo on it. And then he just kind of handed it to me, and I don't know. He like the way he looked at me, the way he addressed my family, and the way that he said, my father's gonna be okay. It just really changed my mindset. Like I knew I wanted to do that in the future, and I knew that I wanted to, become a physician. And yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, both very good answers, and what they seem to kind of have in common is, you're finding a couple of different ways that you can look at medicine too. One, Jahangir, you seem really interested in being able to have that drive, have that intensity, and get to that goal. And Erican, the family aspect of that, like how the doctor made you feel, what you want to kind of portray to people, those are huge. Uh, Medical schools look for that. They want both types of people. That can be incredibly effective and then also compassionate to their patients. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Totally agree. So another question for you guys. As you're kind of at the upper echelon of high school now, getting ready to make that transition into college, what advice would you have for younger high schoolers that may have this dream of becoming a physician one day? What would you say to them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Many of my classmates, they're really playing the GPA game, and that's mostly just taking a normal amount of AP classes just to boost their GPA, which I really try to discourage that because finding your passion in high school, whether that's engineering, medicine, business, or law, it's very important because once you find your passion, once you know what you want to pursue as a career, then you'll know what you want to do, and life will just I think life will just be easier if you know what you want to do. It's what my dad has always taught me. So I think what I'd tell them is try to expose yourself to different different fields of medicine, um different aspects of education, and just put yourself in that sort of field and understand and just learn from your mistakes and learn from what you could learn.
Yeah, to add on to that, one of my personal advice is I know a couple of friends, some of my closest friends, they wanted to pursue medicine and they want to become doctors too, but a good amount of them they're worried about age. You're studying for a long time, and I believe that the studying never stops. Even whenever you are in attending, you're always gonna learn. And so my advice would be, to not really to consider it, but don't let that be the determining factor. I mean, you're going to be 28 anyway, and if you're really happy to really interested in pursuing medicine, why not be 28 and a doctor? So that's my advice. And also, to add on to Jahangir, take those AP classes and expose yourself to those to the kind of curriculum you will be shown in pre-med, and to also visit our website. So yeah.
Perfect plug. Perfect plug.
Great plug.
Yeah, so I totally agree, especially with the age thing, because that hits home for me and David because we're
yeah.
both, low key kind of old, but we're considered non-traditional students. So I'm 29 years old, and I didn't even consider going into medicine until I was 3/4 of the way done college. And so it's never too late. I have people in my class specifically who are as young as 20 years old and as old as in their mid 40s, almost 50 years old. So age is definitely not a factor when it comes to medicine. Whenever you get that spark, and whenever you know that that's what you want to do, I feel like it's never too early and never too late for sure.
Yeah, and I'd second that because, for me, I ended up taking a non-traditional route as well. Had to go the long way around because sometimes, your plans, your ideas of what you think you're going to do end up just going differently because maybe performance isn't quite there, or maybe there's other factors that take place. And that happened for me. So Joe and I ended up in the same program and then went on to medical school after that. And I'm 28, so it's definitely not too late for anyone, especially if you're in your 20s or if you're younger than that or older than that. It's not going to be a problem for people to be able to go into medicine. So I like that idea, making sure that that's not the primary thought to have about whether you want to go in or not. It's really really helpful for people. Hopefully not too many people are really getting turned off to medical school or medicine in general because of that, but it's definitely an idea out there. So yeah.
Yeah, and for me too, it's like you guys were talking about first seeing medicine at some aspect. So, reading textbooks or, for whatever circumstance, being in the hospital and seeing how it worked and interacting with physicians and nurses. I had a similar thing happen to me where I had some friends that were in nursing school at my undergrad university, and I had never been, around medicine growing up. I was terrified of the doctor until I was like 16 years old, like terrified of needles, that whole thing. Like if 16-year-old me knew that I was in medical school right now and 2 years away from becoming a physician, he would be shocked. Like it was just never in the cards. But yeah, like you get this spark and then you're like, wow, I'm really interested in it, and then you find that motivation. Because for me, when I was in undergrad, I started off as like a government major, and so I just hated it. It was so boring. I didn't do very well because I didn't like it. But you find that spark, whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be medicine, but once you find that spark and you're like, oh man, I really do want to study this. I'm really interested. Like, how does this work? That's when you can kind of continue to grow and mature and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, guys, I love it. I love MedPorium. I love the mission, the vision, and you guys are definitely off on the right track for sure.
Thank you.
So moving on kind of to our next part, do you guys have any questions for myself or for David about medical school, anything like that?
Yeah. We were wondering, since we want to apply to medical school sometime in the future, we were wondering, what are some things that we could do in college that could make us stand out and sort of get into that medical school position besides having a very high MCAT?
That's a great question. There's a few. If I were to start, I think that you should prioritize having a high GPA even over the MCAT, because sometimes that can really make or break what goes on too. And what that might look like is you might take fewer classes than you might think to in order to get the highest grade in all of them by having enough time to go through and learn that material really well. It might look like taking classes that are a little bit easier on the side with your actual coursework for moving you toward medical school so that you can keep things solid in that realm. And then there's all sorts of other things too, but making sure that you prioritize having that study time, getting really effective study methods down to help you move forward is a really good set of things. You can also do research. If you can do research, sometimes the whole schedule of things that your undergrad will take you through might make it difficult to do research on the side, but if you can, that's a really good idea. And then volunteering. If you have a lot of volunteer hours at a hospital, if you have a lot of shadow hours going and seeing physicians work, going and experiencing things in the hospital that allows you to kind of say on your application, I get what I'm getting into. I don't have any, false ideas about what it really looks like for these people to be acting as doctors, to be acting as nurses, whatever it is you want to do. And I know that that is what I'm suited for, and that is what I want to do. Um, Lots of the time, medical schools will look at people who haven't quite crystallized their vision for what they really want to do in medicine and say, why would this person really be a good fit for this field over the course of their life? Maybe they just don't think that they'll pan out. And that can really set you apart if you have a really solid vision, if you have really good experience to go with it. Those are super, super helpful. You have any other ideas, Joe?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about this quite a lot last night because again, I'm 29 and so I'm pretty far separated from, definitely from high school and even from undergrad. And like I mentioned, I wasn't even interested in medicine at all until I was 3/4 of the way done college. And so I was trying to think like, okay, what things did I do in that time that I wasn't interested in medicine that I still believe helped me currently? So some of the things that I wrote down, the first is practicing life skills and learning good habits. So some of the things I wrote were waking up early. Don't get into the routine in high school and college and of staying up really, really late and sleeping until noon. That's a really good habit to have is waking up early and kind of just getting started with your day. Another one that is huge for me and like one of my biggest pet peeves is don't be a late person,
Mhm.
right? You will always meet late people that no matter what it is, no matter what event, class, anything, they are always late. Don't be that person. Arrive early to everything. There's even people in my class currently that show up late to class, and our professor kind of, chewed them out a little bit the other day, saying, "Look, when you guys get to rotations, your attendings, will rip you to shreds when you're late." So again, another good thing to kind of work towards as you're still young in college and stuff, be an early person, not a late person. Next is people skills, having good eye contact, a good solid handshake, um, and things like that. Along with that, I would also say meet people and talk to as many people as possible. Because one thing that I've seen, and I'm sure David has seen this as well, in terms of medicine and being a physician, everybody is smart, but some people are almost too smart for their own good and they're not great communicators. And this year, in particularly for me, in second year of medical school, we have a lot of standardized patients, which are basically, patient actors that, you do a whole patient encounter with, basically. And we have brilliant people that we work with, but they're not great at talking to people. And so one thing that, I did when I was in college, just talk to a bunch of people and meet people, learn about their different cultures, become a people person because as physicians, that is your job is talking to people. Doesn't matter how big your brain is, if you can't get, a fluent history from your patient and you're choked up because you're scared to talk to people, you're not an effective physician. So that's another big one for me is meet lots of people, talk to people, eye contact, solid handshake. Next, and lastly for me is become trustworthy and reliable. When you meet these people and you guys have this MedPorium platform, you know, show up to things on time, which you guys have, and it's perfect. But when you say something to somebody, you want that person to believe that what you said is true and you're going to do what you said, right? Being trustworthy and reliable. A lot of people at my school, they go a little bit too overboard with extracurricular activities where they're like, oh, I want my resume filled from the top to bottom with a bunch of different things. And they get overwhelmed and then they start flaking out because, oh, I can't do this because I have this instead, or, oh, I'm so sorry, I know I signed up to do this, but yada yada, right? So be trustworthy and reliable. When you say you're going to do something, do it. And try not to get overwhelmed. Talking about like medical school applications, I've always heard that it's better to have less activities that you're involved in, but be very strong and involved in those fewer things. People would medical school admissions committees would rather see that you did, 2 or 3 things, but were super, super involved, rather than 100 different things that you kind of just skimmed the surface, right? So that's kind of my little spiel, the advice that I would give. The one thing that I would also add is I didn't mention anything about academics. And the reason is because that kind of stuff comes with time. But um, people skills and learning to talk with people and building those good habits, like waking up early, showing up on time, showing up early, that kind of stuff takes a lot more time. So yeah, that would be my advice. Meet people, experience life, do lots of cool stuff. And the academics will go along with you. And that's stuff that you definitely pick up along the way.
If I could add one more thing to that, because everything that Joe is talking about is super applicable. And kind of along that same theme, being the kind of person that is not willing to complain a huge amount about what you're going through will set you apart as a person, both for your peers and for the admissions committee, because it's really easy to kind of get into the mindset of like, oh my gosh, like all this stuff, it's piling up, it's happening to me, I have all these assignments, but I also want to spend time with friends, and there's a variety of different things going on. Being willing to step back and say, okay, well, I can look at this as a negative experience, or I can look at this as a learning experience, and moving forward, and being that kind of consistent learner that isn't willing to let their circumstances dictate whether they're a positive or negative person. That's super helpful, because the culture in medical school, in some ways, has a lot of people that are really unhappy with how the coursework goes. And regardless of that, like it just makes it very difficult to go through if you don't trust that the system is there for a purpose, and that it's all going to be okay if everything gets done. So just remember that kind of humility, that kind of character building is super helpful for med school.
Yeah, nobody likes a complainer. In medical school and in college, everybody's in the same boat. We get it. I hear people around campus, in my class complaining, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had so much stuff to do today, and I didn't even get to look at the lectures from today until like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm running on like an hour of sleep." Sorry, nobody cares. We're all doing
Yep.
the same thing. So just embracing it and having a good attitude will get you miles ahead of everybody else. And when you have a good attitude, people kind of are drawn towards you. And so they'll reach out to you for help. Hey, how did you do this? What did you do here? Like, why are you so happy when I am so miserable? But yeah, nobody likes a complainer. Everybody's in the same boat. Let's see, what else? Any other questions that you guys have just about medical school? Anything on your mind?
You guys mentioned, Joe, you mentioned amazing habits. It's really good advice. Even me personally, I did some of those things, and now I get this information. And you mentioned academic habits, and I know you said it comes with experience, but what advice do you have for like high school students and like pre-med students who want to build up their academic success?
Yeah, I would say having a good schedule. One thing that I do every single day in medical school is build my schedule. And I think that that actually helps me academically. And so when you get to medical school, you have so much information to cover, you kind of have to plan it out. And so I feel like if you're able to plan out your day and you say, okay, I'm going to do this at this time, this at this time, staying on track is half of the battle. Because with such a massive amount of information, if you didn't have a plan and you just sat down and you're like, okay, where do I even begin? So part of being strong academically is having a plan and knowing how to attack that information. I would say in terms of high school students, wanting to go into medicine, I would say try to push yourselves a little bit and do some research on your own because it can help you learn more difficult material. So an example I would give would be to maybe find a topic that you're interested in and look up a research article about it. And at first, it might be really, really difficult to read because you're like, man, I'm not so sure about this. But take your time and go through the paper. And if you don't know something, look it up and figure out what this means and, learn about the pathophysiology behind whatever it's talking about and kind of just go at that at your own pace. Um, and I feel like that could be something really helpful, um, just to kind of grow your chops a little bit in terms of practicing understanding difficult material. Because once you are better at that, it comes a lot easier. And so you're able to absorb difficult information faster once you have kind of a foundation. But David, what would you say?
Oh, I 100% agree with everything that you said. If I were to add something to it, I might just say if you're worried about whether you're going to have some trouble learning things, but you want like a resource that would be helpful for learning how to learn, there's a couple of books. One's called Make It Stick, and another is called A Mind for Numbers. They're both by a group of researchers that basically go through and lay down really effective learning techniques, both for college and into medical school, just general style stuff that can be very, very helpful. So I would read those if you're interested, but also just as a habit thing, giving yourself a checklist. Just the most basic thing for time management is super helpful. And then if you're trying to think of how to learn something, being willing to lay aside the notes or take the notes that you've written out for yourself and totally cover them up and see how much of it you could spit back out, either by talking it through or by laying it out on a whiteboard, something like that, that forces you to kind of think through stuff and be able to, recall it. That kind of stuff is incredibly helpful, whether you're in high school, you're in college, or right now in medical school. That's literally all I do to study is lay out whether or not I know something from a slide, having covered it up, and it helps like nothing you could ever think of. So that kind of stuff where you practice and practice more.
For sure. I'd also add, with your platform that is MedPorium and kind of getting into the medical education side of things, a really helpful technique that I use sometimes is called the Feynman technique. And what that is teaching the material to somebody else. The thing that I like about that is if you're studying, you don't necessarily have to be like, hey, mom, come here and let me teach you about, this organic chemistry pathway. Like it's more of a mindset thing where if I'm looking at a slide, like a PowerPoint slide, I'm like, okay, how would I explain this to somebody else? And so I'll sit there and I just think about it. I would say, okay, I would probably say, this and this and this. So it doesn't have to be, necessarily a physical thing that you do, but more of a way of thinking about the slides. But again, we're all four of us here are teachers at Nature. And so I think that technique is really helpful for learning information as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely. We definitely use that. I remember for AP Biology, I made Anki cards that were basically like open-ended questions that I'd actually pretend that I was like a professor and teaching some people. So, like for example, one of the questions was, what is the pathway of cellular respiration? Then I'd go on my whiteboard and then I draw it out and I'd like explain it as if I was a professor talking to my students. And yeah, we've definitely used the famous technique. I think that's what also drove us to creating MedPorium, just teaching, because we learned that when you teach other people, you learn it just as more. So it's just a mutual benefit.
I'm glad you guys mentioned that. That's one of MedPorium's basic principles, basic ideas. You know, if you can teach it, then you can learn it basically again. And so I really enjoyed making the skeletal system videos with, and I had a hard time specifically with bone remodeling. It's very complex in my opinion, and so I I looked at all these videos, I read the textbooks, and then first I explained it to, my friends that had no idea what was going on, and then like people who are interested in, business and finance and economics. And so I explained that to them, and they kind of understood it. And then I went home and I used the whiteboard technique. I just kind of wrote everything down that I could, regurgitate off the top of my memory, with active recall. But and then yeah, so we enjoy the Feynman technique too, and I'm glad you guys mentioned that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And, you know, here we try to think of like the big picture a lot too. And so using that technique, when you're studying by yourself, when you're trying to teach something that's so difficult, right? You need to, in your own mind, process the difficult information and then spit it back out in a way that's easy for everybody to understand, right? As a physician, you do the exact same thing every single day in talking to patients. And one thing that we get, like in OSCE type stuff and in the standardized patient interactions, you will always lose points when you use medical lingo with your patients because, patients aren't all physicians or all in the medical field. And so that's a super useful technique to practice at your young age is taking difficult information and learning how to explain it in an easy way because it's so useful when you get to medical school and you actually start talking to patients. And that's another part that brilliant people get tripped up with when they talk to their patients because they've never tried to explain this difficult technique in layman's terms. They could explain it, to other medical people and we would know exactly what they're saying, but um yesterday I had a standardized patient and I had to explain what heart failure was to them. It's like, man, how do you do that to a normal person? And so I think that that is again a really useful technique to have and something that comes with time and to continue to work on is taking difficult information and how do I explain this to normal people so that they can understand. Very, very handy to have.
Joe's absolutely correct about that. Just being able to describe things as if you were talking to a 4-year-old, for instance, because as a physician, even if you're a surgeon, you might be seeing like a 4-year-old come into your clinic and try to figure out how to help them understand things. Great technique, great thing to be able to do. So
Yeah. So what else? Any other questions that you guys have for us? Anything you want to talk about?
I think we have one more question. We wanted to get
Yeah.
your opinion over European medical schools because we've been researching before. We've found out that we can go from high school to medical school if we go to Europe, and it would just be 6 years, which would basically be 2 years off of education. And main reason why we want to do that is so we can get to our end goal, which is just becoming physicians, becoming surgeons. So we wanted to get your opinion on that. Would you recommend that? Would you sort of think of that as a option? We just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. For me, my immediate reaction is that I loved college in the United States so much. And I think that I'll be a better physician one day because of it. And it's time that you don't necessarily, for me, want to miss, right? Again, you meet so many amazing people, you have so much to learn and experience while you're there. I know you guys are in Texas, and so if you go to big time Texas universities, like, you know, going to a football game with all of your friends and stuff, and those are experiences that once you're an attending physician one day, you might not be able to get back. And things that I did in college and in graduate school, I cherish so much. And so it's things that I wouldn't want you guys to miss. And um, I don't think, I don't think that there should necessarily be such a huge rush jumping into trying to be a physician. Because you reach the end goal so quickly, and then you're like, man, now what? But yeah, David, what do you think?
I think that I'd echo that. But I also kind of want to look at it from just the practical approach too. The schools in Europe, some of them are very, very effective at making sure that you can practice in the States. And I think that you guys were wanting to practice in the States. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So some of them are very good at making sure that you can come and practice in the States, and others of them are less so. So there's that. But also, I think that something that's really interesting about having the 4 years, or sometimes you can do things in 3 years if you'd like to. There's always summer terms where you can take extra courses, so you can lower the amount of time that you're spending in undergrad if you'd like to do that. But one of the things that's really helpful about having that extra time is that you can learn things more effectively by taking extra time to understand them. And having that extra time might actually help you as a physician, because you've kind of gotten through a really effective round, of going over information that will be foundational in medical school and then as a physician. But also, there are stepping programs where you take your undergrad, and as long as you have a certain GPA, you can be admitted to the medical school in 3 or 4 years and have technically done like part of a first year medical school curriculum and then move on to second year like that. So you can accomplish the same type of thing that you're talking about, but still have, a little bit of extra time, have ease of getting residency slots, because American residencies will prioritize students from American schools. That's just how it works. There are some problems sometimes if you do an international program. Not always, but with some of them. So I would just take that into consideration, to be mindful of kind of some of those realities that might make things a little bit more difficult for you in the future if you try to do something like that. But I don't want to discourage you guys from doing something that would allow you to be physicians in the time that you'd like to be. One of the things that Joe and I really love about being in a medical school is that it is, difficult, but exactly what we want to be doing. And yeah, so we want to just make sure that you guys know that there are multiple paths to get to medical school and to become a physician, and you should think about them and weigh them and find the one that works the best for you.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, as soon as you step outside of the United States and hope to match there again one day, you're instantly tagged as an IMG, an international medical grad. Doesn't matter where you go. As soon as you step outside of the United States, you're an IMG. And with the lofty ambition that you guys have, it would definitely make it a lot harder to get back and into to match into surgery and that kind of stuff, because your counterparts that especially going back to like Texas, because Texas has like its own, it's really hard to match into Texas. So people that are your same age right now that go to, say Baylor for their 4 years of undergrad, go to medical school in Texas, and then they're also applying to surgery, they will automatically get priority. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think that, and I not think, I know that you guys have great heads on your shoulders. And I know that if you decided to, you'll get into amazing schools anywhere in the United States. You'll get into a top tier medical school. Um, and doing that would make reaching those types of goals much easier. Um, if you guys were like, yeah, I just am very passionate about family medicine, like that is my goal, that is my dream, I would have no issues saying, dude, do it. Go somewhere, go live in England for like 6 years. That would be so awesome. Um, but it is that little bit of a red flag with, the difficulty of matching into like orthopedic surgery and CT surgery, that kind of stuff. It would be a little bit more difficult. But again, David and I here are not one to, shoot down anybody's plans. Live your dream, um, as long as you do your research and on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What do you guys think of that? Can you walk me through like the thought process? Is it mostly just a time frame thing, or are there other factors that you're interested in the European schools that you were looking at?
So yeah, one of the biggest reasons is that time factor. But also some of the schools, end up becoming a little bit more cheaper, if you go that way, that route. And for example, my father, he went to med school outside of the United States, and so where he grew up. Yeah. And so he went straight out of high school into medical school and finished it in 6 years. And he said it was, he was very thankful for that because it was able to just get there earlier and allow him to save money. And but yeah, I think the time factor is probably one of the biggest factors. Jahangir?
Yeah, definitely the time factor, and yeah, we just really want to be surgeons or become physicians as fast as we can. But after what Joe said about the experiences we might miss, I feel like that's kind of changing my mind. And as well as if we want to come back to the States, it would be better if, like, for example, if we wanted to match the Texas Medical Center, which is one of the biggest medical complexes in a nation. If we wanted to match there, it would be better if we went to Baylor than, say, some European medical school. So yeah, the main reason why it's time factor and the tuition is much more cheaper in the international medical schools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally fair.
Yeah, it's funny to me too because when you're thinking about medical school, you also have to think about life, right? And once you're a physician, like you also just live your life. Physicians are normal people too, with families and everything. And it's funny, when you guys were talking about going, straight out of high school into medical school, and I immediately thought, I'm like, man, I personally, I could have never done that because you two are way more mature than I was at, 17, 18 years old. If I did that, your boy would have flunked out immediately. Um, and so if you guys do choose to go that route, I have no doubt that you would be successful. Um, but just from my perspective, I'm a big life guy. Like I want to, live my life, wife and kids and have a nice house with the backyard and the two dogs and that kind of stuff. Um, because I don't necessarily want to devote my entire life to medicine. But that's your passion. Um, and so again, you guys have great heads on your shoulders, and I know whatever decision you guys end up making will be the right one.
Agreed.
Thank you. Yeah.
So what else? Anything else that you guys want to talk about before we kind of wrap this up?
Uh, I don't, I don't think so. I don't really have any more questions. I mean, all the questions that we've asked are the biggest questions that we want to ask any medical student. We've always been confused on whether we should go international or not, how hard, how difficult medical school would be, how we can stand out. So, yeah, I think that's all.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for you guys for, giving this information to us. And, I'm sure you guys would have enjoyed, probably seeing this video whenever you were our age. And me personally, I love to see this video and, see what's going on in the aspects of, med school and all these habits you gave us. And really, really grateful for that.
For sure, yeah. We definitely appreciate you guys being here. Again, we love MedPorium. The vision, mission are amazing. We think that you guys are going to do great, great things one day. So I guess we'll end it here. Thank you guys so much for listening. This will be on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that you can get a podcast. And this will also be available on YouTube as the video if you want to see our nice, beautiful faces instead of just listening by itself. So for us, we're the Biomed Bros. You can follow us at the Biomed Bros on pretty much every social media platform. Again, YouTube included. MedPorium guys, you want to tag all of your stuff?
Yeah, you can find us at MedPorium. We are on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And also we have a Patreon, MedPorium. And once again, if you guys want to get a head start on and spread out that curriculum for med school, feel free to visit our website, medporium.org.
Yeah. Pomodoro Day will make you a doctor someday.
There you go.
Amen, brother. Amen. I got about 9 or 10 Pomodoros waiting for me later on today. So
And me too, actually. So.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We really enjoyed it, and all the best in the future.
Thank you. Likewise for having us.